Hi, guys.
What up?
Um, so there's a lot to cover tonight, so we're probably just going to start telling our story, jump right in, and hopefully some people are able to join us. So we're Earl and Kathy Morris.
It's me.
And we have been doing foster care. If you count the years we've had our little boys that we adopted, we've been doing it 7 years. Yeah. So we just real quickly want to share with you what led us to even consider doing foster care. When I was in college, I tried to do jobs that, thanks, Andrea. I tried to do jobs that I could take Hannah with me on because my mom already watched her. I was a single mom, lived at home, and she already watched her while I went to nursing school. And so I wanted to do things to give my mom a break. So I went on the job board. There was a nanny position for a little boy. And I went to take care of him the first time. And the situation was he was in foster care. This was a foster home. And the house was filthy. I mean, it was disgusting. Not only did she smoke in the house, but it was just not clean. And so I watched him there the first time, cleaned the whole house. And then I asked her if I could bring him back to my parents' house. And so anyway, Earl and I were dating at the time, and we would watch Jamel together. He was around Hannah's age. They played together. It was a really sweet time. And so that was our first exposure to foster care. And I thought, man, if this is a foster home and it's supposed to be better than where he was taken from, and I think it's gross, then, what kind of situation is he coming from? So fast forward, we got married, had our own children, and it just kept popping up different scenarios where we would hear about foster care. And we just kind of felt like, well, I especially felt like I want to do this. And then Earl wasn't sure, guys just aren't as compassionate naturally as women are. And I think it's harder for them to be like, want to open their hearts and their homes. And there's the financial piece of providing maybe.
I think it's more, well, as a man, I'll say it's kind of like you want to prove that you can have your own.
Mm.
Like I'm a man, I make babies and all that kind of stuff. But it's a prideful thing. And then the idea of like all the unknowns, like I struggled with some of the same things, just in not so emotional of a way. I think I hid it behind wanting to do my own thing.
Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah. So, so fast forward, we finally got on the same page about doing foster care, and that's your story too.
Yeah.
I had been kind of asking him.
And so for those that aren't familiar with the military, you have to like stay the night, and it's kind of like babysit the area. And so I was a young lieutenant. I wasn't so much young, but I was a lieutenant, and I had watch. And so we take shifts. I don't know if you're supposed to sleep, but I guess it doesn't matter now. We would take turns taking naps on a cot. And so I was asleep, and clear as day, I can remember I had a dream where there was an ocean. I was like in an ocean, but the water probably was, I don't know, maybe chest high. And it was just lots of water moving. And I was realized that it wasn't water, but they were children. They were like heads of toddlers or children, whatever. And I started trying to grab them. And every time I grabbed one, it would slip away from me. And I just kept trying to grab. And I just couldn't. I finally got a hold of one, and I was so happy. And when I woke up, I was just bawling, crying. And I called Kathy or texted her at like 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. And I was like, all right, I think God just told me that we're going to do foster care. And so.
And at the time, we thought we were just going to try and adopt.
Yeah. I still was on the whole, I'm not trying to take care of somebody else's problems. Like I was going to answer what God told me to do in my own way, and that was not.
Yeah. Yeah. So we actually, we were in Washington State then, and then we moved to Fort Rucker, and we were only there 7 months. So then when we finally got to Tennessee, I called and we started the foster care classes right away. So when we first got to the foster care classes, we were just going to look into foster to adopt. And as soon as we sat and started listening and actually just kind of being present there, we realized I think it was on our first break from the first class, and we were like, okay, so we're supposed to do foster care, like whatever that means, like whether we get to keep them or not. And at that time, I think we were kind of naive, maybe. You just don't know. You don't know what you don't know, right? And so we knew it was going to be hard.
Yeah.
But you don't realize what is going to be hard. Like you're just thinking, okay, taking care of these kids is going to be hard. And looking back on it, like that's actually kind of the easiest part is taking care of the kids.
By far.
Because you know, parenting is hard anyway. Like whether they're yours or, you know, they came out of foster care, like none of us really know what we're doing, you know, like we just
figure it out on the fly.
It's just like, you know, like, oh, well, that didn't work, so let's try something else. You know, you can read books and all that, but so yeah, taking care of the kids is not the hardest part. I think for the first time, now our first placement was pretty hard because we got a 6 and a 4-year-old, and then Earl left 2 weeks later, and so here I was, like, single mom, 5 kids, 2 of them, you know, and so I had to do the parent visits and the social worker and all that.
I deployed. For some of you that may not know what Earl left means, I didn't just bounce. I was like,
he went to Afghanistan for 9 months.
Yeah.
So that was hard. I think the social workers, dealing with the social workers and the judicial system has been the biggest challenge for me. You expect that everybody wants the best for these kids and that they are going to listen to you as a parent, as the person taking care of them. And you quickly realize that that's not really the case.
No.
Those of you, I think everybody here probably knows me well enough to know that I'm probably going to cry, maybe more than once, because this is tough stuff. It's the hardest thing I've ever had to do. So just pouring your heart and soul into someone, these little children who are innocent and it's not their fault, whatever they're going through. And then seeing that the system is just that. It's just a system. It's just a job. It's just another day in the office for a lot of people. That's really hard. And God even changed our hearts toward the parents and the families.
Still working on the social workers.
Yeah. Like we have developed a lot of compassion for these people, the families, the parents who have lost their children. Yeah,
I think that one of the things that as we continue to walk on, along this path, on this journey together, realizing that to be like Christ is really, really hard, and it's nothing that comes natural. And so, but as we open our heart to these children and these families, you realize that someone's got to be in a really bad spot to lose their child, right? Like no one wants to lose their child. And I think that is the part that like being empathetic towards whatever their plight is. And what we often find that a lot of the parents of these children, it's a cycle. They were in the system as well, and their parents. And I guess I wanted to say this earlier, but like if you think this is going to be like something like motivate you because foster care is easy, this is the wrong video to watch. But if you are, be it that you are driven by the desire to live a life that reflects Christ as a follower of Christ, cool. If you want to do it because you just think it's what is the right thing to do and you want to do it, then cool. But understand that whatever your reasoning is, you're going to have to be grounded in that, or else the novelty will wear off. And it has to be about something more than yourself. And so that can be, I don't know. I just felt like I needed to say that. I'll stop talking.
Well, no, we
questions or anything? Just the actual.
Yeah, if they have a question, it'll pop up there.
Right, second time.
I have it figured out. And please do, if you have any questions that you've always wondered or specific to us, or just about in general foster care or adoption through foster care, because we have some talking points, but we don't have a script or anything. Something that a lot of people say to foster parents, and I think it's because they're uncomfortable. When I tell people that we do foster care or that we have done it in the past, the number one comment I get is, I could never do that. It would be too hard, or I could never say goodbye. And what I would like to say right now is, please don't say that to people, because it almost is an insult. Like I'm so, like, either I don't care enough about the kids, so like saying goodbye is not a big deal, like you can take it that way, or it can also make you kind of, I guess for lack of a better word, like angry, like, no, you could do this. Like, it's not about us. It's not about how strong we are or how, I don't know what the word is, but we literally only, like, you do it, you say goodbye because you have to. Like,
right, the law
says
the
court takes this kid from you.
What do they call it? The goal.
The goal is almost always reunification.
Reunification. There it is.
And if it's not reunification with parents, they're trying to find family. So like the whole time you have this child, you're pouring into them, they are actively looking for blood relatives, not someone who's necessarily going to do what's best for them or take the best care of them or provide the best future for them. Like, that's not the point. The point is blood relatives. Who can we find? Let's get them back with their family, because this is costing the state money.
Yeah.
And so we are not superhumans, and we are not super spiritual. In fact, I'm pretty sure that doing foster care and adoption brings all the nasty, yucky out of you even more. Like the Bible says, out of the heart, the mouth speaks. And, lots of curse words flying. Hi, Beth. Well, but you know what? I think that is why in the New Testament, when we're called to do all these hard things, and we're promised trials and persecution, I think it's because God knows us, and very, very few of us, when things are going well and easy and beautiful and happy, very few of us actually reach for God in those moments and grow.
No.
And if we are spending time with him, we become kind of like me-centered, like,
look how the Lord has blessed me.
Yeah, and look at how I'm growing. But like most of us, we need those hard circumstances. And this, we're the same way. Like,
yes.
When I am struggling and at the end of myself, that is when I am reaching up and looking for help from God and growing. So, okay, So if you guys have any questions, if not, we'll just go through and kind of share anything else. Let's see. Earl, what's the most rewarding part of foster care that you've experienced?
Oh boy. Man.
Well, it was your thing.
No, I all of a sudden I was overwhelmed with emotion. Because I started thinking about I think everybody that's watching now or has it, whatever, doesn't matter. Probably knows me as an emotionally closed off individual, unless you get to know me or you see me around children. But seeing the joy in the face of a child who maybe isn't even old enough to realize that they've never been loved or been shown affection, to see the look of, I don't know, validation in a child's face, that they matter, is the most rewarding part I've ever. It's been most rewarding. One of the most rewarding things I've ever been able to experience, and they know that they are safe, and you reach a point where they realize they're safe with you. So, yeah.
And I would say one of my most rewarding, we've had 3, besides the 2 that we've adopted forever. And Jessica, I see your question and I'll answer it in a minute. We've had 3 long-term placements, and then we've had quite a few in like little short-term. And so our first long-term placements, the one when Earl was in Afghanistan, they were 6 and 4. And Isaiah was 6 also at the time. So we always read stories at bedtime and all that. And so they always heard the gospel. They went to church with us and all. And both of them asked Jesus into their hearts when they were living with us. And so that was probably the most rewarding. And then our second placement, we had 2 little ones, 2 and 11 months. And they were there 5.5 months. And their mom actually came to church with us, and she asked Christ into her heart. And so even though she died 2 weeks later of a drug overdose, and even though, I'll never see my first 2 foster kiddos again, probably, you just have to leave that in God's hands. Like, He knows their hearts, and He knows, even if there was not a true understanding of what a relationship with Christ looks like, you just know that you planted those seeds, and you pray for them that they will carry the love that you implanted in their hearts with them. And so, even though Aiden and Lilia's mama died, God knew her heart. And so that was not our place to judge that.
No.
So
I think that was one of the first, that was, I feel like a turning point in our how we viewed the parents because, there was a lot of judgment in our hearts. And when we opened our heart to her, I don't know, it just changed things. And you realize everybody's human and broken. And so, yeah.
Okay, Jessica asked, how long between foster classes and placement, and then how long between placement and being able to adopt, if that is the goal? Okay, so in Tennessee, we've been licensed 2 places, and we're getting ready to start licensing here in North Carolina. So I don't know about that, but in Tennessee, we started the classes in March, and we were done with licensing in the middle of the summer.
It's 9 weeks, right?
The classes?
Yeah.
Yeah, probably like 9 or 10 classes. And then the home study and all the paperwork and all that. They come out several times. So they called with our first placement, Marika and Jaquan. And the next day I got my letter that said, hey, you're licensed. So there was no time at all, because they are desperate for families. They are desperate for people who can take to take children. And so you will not wait long at all. Now, as far as if you are only open to taking adoptable kids, I cannot answer that, because even though we did adopt Josh and JJ, we didn't know that when we took them that we would be adopting them. And so Josh was born at the end of June in 2015, and we did not finalize adoption until December of 2017. Yeah. And so he was almost a year and a half old. And JJ was a little longer. So JJ was born in October of 2015, and we finalized adoption June 2nd of 2018.
17.
No.
Oh, it is 2018.
Oh, okay. Sorry. So Joshy was 2016. Sorry, I said 2017. So December of 2016, and then June of 2017.
Like 18 months and 24 months, basically, roughly.
Almost, yeah, 22 or yeah, whatever.
Ballpark.
Yeah. So that's how long it took to actually, terminate rights and all that. And that doesn't mean that they didn't try and keep their kids. Adoption, you may have seen these quotes. Hi, Sarah, thanks. Love you too. Adoption is a story of loss, and it is a story of redemption. And I don't think I really wrapped my mind around that. Before that, I just thought, I just wanted to keep them because I had invested in them and raised them, and I've always wanted to keep every single foster kid we've ever had. Like, it's just hard when they leave. But when I actually was faced with keeping Josh and JJ, it really wrecked my world, I guess, realizing, wow, this isn't the end of foster care and our story. This is the beginning of the rest of our lives together. And they are going to have questions. They're going to have heartache. They're going to feel unwanted and unloved by their birth family. Even though that may not have been the case, that's just, I feel like that's probably how they're going to feel at some point.
I think it's a little backstory. I am a child of abandonment. My father, biological father, abandoned me, and I guess Facebook is a place where anybody ever runs into a guy who looks just like me, tell him I say what's up.
With
the same name, we look a lot like. But it's really challenging to go through your life wondering why.
Mm-hmm.
And I was blessed to have loving parents, my stepfather, my dad who raised me. But when you stop and you look at what they are dealing with, right? The children, babies, school age, whatever the case, there's a lot of hurt, there's a lot of confusion. And then when you mix that with all of the other things that just go on with growing up as a child,
mm-hmm.
Discovering who you are as a person, there has to be empathy there. Like, it's not about, I get to keep this special child. You are inviting their life and their lineage into your world, and you have to be, I don't know if I say you have to be willing, but you should be willing to address that and do
to not act like it doesn't exist.
Right, like we had no idea that we would get to adopt Josh and JJ, and I wouldn't trade it for the world. But there's hurt and loss there, and I look at them sometimes and I wonder, what that's going to be like when the time comes. But I'm not going to say it doesn't matter, but we know that we are obedient to Christ, right? If we avoid conflict or challenges because it's easy for us, the system is full of children who are not in homes because people want it to be easy for them. We're in a world, a land of so much plenty, and you're never going to have enough time. People never have enough time or enough money to have children naturally. So you're not going to find a perfect time to bring a child into your life through foster care, but they need loving homes. They need safe places, and they're not asking for the world. They're just asking for something better than what they've got. So,
I actually was thinking about that earlier. We as a nation and just people who believe in Jesus Christ really need to stop focusing on how hard and how much it will cost us and start focusing more on what it will cost these kids to not be in loving Christian homes. Like, they are created in the image of God, and they are precious to Him. And He, for some crazy reason, has chosen His people to fulfill His purpose on earth. And if His people are not willing to do it, then it falls to the state, the government. Thanks, Mary. We're really not beautiful.
We are scared of not doing what the Lord's calling us to do, right? Like not being obedient. We don't do foster care because we're scared of God, but it is, it's what we're supposed to do, man, right? Like, I mean, just call it what it is. We beat around the bush and we say things to make, and I'm saying we because I'm including myself. We say things to avoid the responsibility. I just got to a certain place in my life. I just got a new fill in the blank, or, what about my kids? That's another part, right? Like, what are we teaching?
One, yeah.
What are we teaching the generation of believers that we are raising? If it's all about them, well, what about your kids? Don't they get jealous? Yeah, they get jealous. They get jealous of their own siblings, but that doesn't mean that you don't. Like, so what? Like, we want our children to live a life modeled after Christ. They're not going to do that if they don't see it modeled in their home. Mm-hmm. So they didn't walk with Jesus. So they have to be able to see what that looks like modeled through the adults that are around them all the time. And what better way to help them understand that the world doesn't revolve around them, and how to be selfless as people and to be like Christ than to surrender things that they think matter, that are important to them, and to understand that it's not all about them. So I have to be reminded that's not all about me too. So yeah, we're learning together.
That is an awesome point too, because I've had a lot of people say to me, your kids are so great. They're so respectful and well-mannered. And honestly, I tell them doing foster care has made us all have to step outside of ourselves. And the day-to-day is not easy, like, oh, you've got to watch your sisters or brother, or you've got to, I've got to run this guy to a family visit or to go to court, or, like, that stuff is hard. It's not easy. But over time, as your kids become, like, they realize this isn't something mom and dad are doing, this is something we are doing, they take ownership in that. Yeah. And they get really proud of it and excited. Like, when you get a call for a placement, it's almost like Christmas. Yeah. It's like, oh, we're getting a 2-year-old and a 5-month-old. Okay, run up to the attic and get the 2 car seats, and Earl, we got to put this crib together. And then, Earl and I get in a fight and get mad. And then it's like, okay, we got to get the bins of clothes out. And, like, that is, it's a family thing. It is a group activity, and we are all in it together. Like, nobody has a pass. Nobody's sitting on the couch. Like,
get hot,
get up and get moving right now. Yeah. So I think that has contributed hugely to the kind of people that they are. And both of my girls, Isaiah's still young, and it's all about him still. But the girls have both said, they both want to do foster care or adoption in some way, because they've internalized that, and it's really cool to see. Oh, thanks, Rachel.
And I also, so like on the opposite end of that, right? Like of it being Christmas and everything is great and we're excited and our family is hard charging about this. Fast forward to court, right? Where you're dealing with people who have become hardened by the system, the people working on behalf of the behalf of the children have become calloused because they see so much hate and contempt and dysfunction, and it has crept into their heart as well. And so you have to deal with that, and that could be extremely challenging. I would say I was almost thrown out of a courtroom.
It was close.
It was pretty close.
We were there, and they were supposed to terminate parental rights on JJ's parents. And then JJ's biological father showed up, and they decided they weren't going to terminate that day. They wanted to give him one more chance. And then they were joking and laughing about it right in front of us sitting there. And I'm over there crying, I thought he was going to be my son that day.
And I go back to
Earl had a moment.
Yeah. And he told me I need to calm down. Anyway, it wasn't my best moment, but I guess it's just an example of and in our relationship, she's more emotional than I am, but I am, I can be aggressive.
More hot-headed, maybe?
Well, I mean, he's still working on.
I mean,
we're calling it what it is, right?
Yeah.
So, but yeah, and so that the idea that someone was not only attacking my family through JJ, but they were attacking Kathy. But then I also felt like the weight of the system of every other child who's ever been manipulated or maybe not received the best care because somebody thought it was not that big of a deal. Mm-hmm. And these are realities that you have to be prepared to deal with when you engage in the system, the government, right? So, I go back to it, if we based our decisions on things being challenging, there's a lot of things in our lives that we probably wouldn't be married if we based our decisions on things that were challenging.
That's true.
And I think that I feel like we should shift to how family, how that, no?
No, I don't know what you're saying.
I just was thinking different things that you have to think about that nobody, you don't really think about when you first get in.
You mean things your family may say? Yeah, I think also is when you get excited about something and you know that God has told you to do it and you're obeying, and you are expecting everyone else to catch that vision and be excited with you and for you. And a lot of times they don't respond that way because they're thinking, in their mind, they're thinking of you and what's best for you and your kids, and
as they see it,
right? But so sometimes you'll get some negative reactions, or maybe not negative, but just not what you hoped for or what you thought they would be. And so, yeah, you have to kind of prepare your heart and your mind for that.
See what our talking points.
Yeah, I don't know. Do you guys want to hear logistics? Actually, this is what it looks like, or
what do you know? There's something you could change. No. Oh, if you're doing this for money, don't do it.
True.
That's some people. I actually had people be like, "Oh, well, you got money, so you're not doing it out of the kindness of your heart." Are you?
But yeah, I will say this. Let me tell you something that we didn't know. They do, because they need families, and they there is a monthly stipend, and it does help above and beyond. If you get elementary age or any school age kid, they are not allowed to be homeschooled. They have to go to public school. And so, and then if you need daycare, in Tennessee, like Jaquan, would go to daycare. Aiden and Lilia would go to daycare to help. So because even though I wasn't working, I was homeschooling the kids. And so that was on top of the monthly stipend we got to help pay for food and diapers and clothes and all that. So it isn't, it's really not a burden. Like, and we would, we had friends donate clothes, and we went and got used cribs at garage sales. And it really is not the kind of burden, like the burden is usually the hard stuff is the emotional stuff. But so in Tennessee, and I can only tell you from Tennessee and Missouri, in Tennessee, we were responsible for supervising parental visits. And I think if we had made a fuss, they probably would have, the social worker would have picked them up and taken them and supervised. But they're really busy. And because I do parent, when I have a foster kid, like, that's my kid, like, that's my kid, like, just like you would your own. And so, like, I wanted to go supervise. I wanted to see the dynamic. I wanted to be as involved as possible. And so that can be awkward because sometimes the parents are trying to talk to you and they're not playing with their kids. And it's like, man, you only get an hour a week. Like, why are you looking at me and talking to me? But a lot of these people are so insecure and they're so broken. They just want you to like them. Like, they want validation that, I'm a good person. I didn't, So you learn to kind of be assertive and redirect. Like, maybe you should go, and that's hard for me. Like, Earl, that's not hard for Earl, but for me, like, I also struggle with wanting people to like me and not being the bad guy, which is, some of you are probably thinking, yeah, right, because I'm so blunt. But, I have to know that you love me unconditionally, probably, before I really get to it. So that is, you may be asked to supervise parental visits. I didn't go to court much in Tennessee. I went to court more in Missouri because they were newborns and babies, and they were easier to, haul here and there. But with the older kids, it's hard, you have to go get them out of school. You have to take them to the court. And I was kind of a brand new homeschooling mom. So we didn't go to court a ton. Unfortunately, foster parents don't get a lot of say anyway. Right. You're there, you're watching, you hear, and they might ask you beforehand what how have parent visits been going. But for as much work as you do, you really feel like you should have a pretty good say. Like, I've seen these parents and how they interact with their kids. I've heard what the kids have told me about their home, or, you are the eyes and ears. You are the feet on the ground, boots on the ground. Is that? Oh,
we should go military?
Yeah.
Boots on the ground.
Yeah. You are in it. And yet what you say doesn't carry a lot of weight. And that is really hard. Then once again, back to the system. The system is the hardest part of it for me. So let's see, what else? Another thing that's hard is the social stigma. With Josh and JJ, they were both newborns, so they were both on formula. And then even with the other little ones, so you get WIC, and that helps you pay for food and formula and all that. And sometimes you'll be checking out and you'll have your WIC all in a row, and people are looking at you, and you just, I used to always somehow work it into this conversation with the cashier that these were for my foster kids. And the Lord really convicted me about that. Like, they don't need to know that. Why do you care what they think? And so I had to really let that go. And oh man,
it teaches a lot of compassion, though, because when you are in line and you're behind someone who has WIC or food stamps or whatever, the EBT, whatever they have, you don't know somebody's story.
Yeah.
Right. Like, someone could have been standing behind us, like, look at them, milking the system or whatever mean, judgmental things are said when we are delayed by 3 minutes because the cashier needs to run the thing through the system.
Well, I used to take my wedding ring off. I used to have a big wedding ring. And that's another story. Anyway, the Lord I need a lot of humility. Like he humbles me in all kinds of ways. But anyway, I used to have a big wedding ring, and I used to take it off and put it in my pocket so that people wouldn't think, why is that lady with that big diamond using, like all these things. And then I've heard other foster mamas say that they'll have, their bio kids and their foster kids and adopted kids. And people will be like, are all those yours? Or they'll talk really loudly behind them like, oh, look what happens when you can't keep your legs closed. And I mean, just like crazy stuff. Yes.
Whoa, you just got.
Well, because this is real stuff. Like you have to be prepared. Like people are judgmental and
jerks.
Yeah, and here you are doing something out of the goodness of your heart, and people are, and so I've heard that people, like the people walk away, foster people walk away from those situations without saying anything, and I'm like, wow, I don't know that I would be the bigger person there, but they're like, my kids don't need to hear all that, like I'm not, this isn't the time or place, but that would be cool to be such a big person that you could just, I don't care what you say or think, like God knows my heart.
Yeah.
But yeah, people will stare at you, try and figure it out. Like, cause a lot of times they may not be the same race as you and your husband or you and your kids, whatever. People ask you if they're all yours. And they'll say stuff in front of the kids. Like, Josh and JJ are still 2 and 3. And, but when the kids are older and people start asking you questions, I think you need to be prepared for, like, what am I going to say? Like, well, we can talk about this another time, or, something to not be offensive, but the kids don't.
Or be offensive. Like, I mean, if somebody starts asking a question about like, well, do they know who their biological mother is? And your 6 or 7-year-old child is sitting right there. Like, that's not an appropriate question to ask me right now. Like, it needs to, and because if I make it seem like, oh, it's okay, like they might say it again. And at the end of the day, we go right back to being the kid, being behind somebody in line that has WIC. I'm not doing this for you. I'm doing this for the children. And this child needs to be loved and protected and not feel like there's some afterthought that, if you're not willing to ask me deep, vetted questions about my children that I have biologically, then Josh and JJ are my biological children. Mm. So anything that you wouldn't ask me about children that came naturally,
biologically,
whatever, yes.
Either way.
Yeah, either way, don't ask me that about Josh and JJ. And that's
real talk.
Real moment with Earl Morris.
I have a friend who has 10 children biologically and 3 children through adoption.
Shout out.
And she has had a lot of comments, I think, about why in the world would they adopt when they already had all these children. And that's the thing. I think in America, we really need to get away from thinking that adoption is just this like last option, like this lesser option of just a way to grow our families. Like really, it shouldn't be about us growing our families at all, but it should be about rescuing these children. Like there are more than like a ridiculous amount of believers in the whole world. And so if we each, in some way, in some capacity, started ministering to foster kids, adopting kids out of foster care, we could soon solve this whole issue and crisis. We just have to really ask ourselves, is it about what makes me comfortable, or is it about what they need? Because if we were in their shoes, we would want people to sacrificially give. We are going to wrap it up soon, but I do want to say this before we go. when we moved to North Carolina, I looked into foster care, and that you had to live here a year before you could do foster care. And so we were like, okay, we'll wait. Looked into some other agencies and options, and it was just like a lot of closed doors. And so then when we got the call that Amber needed a home, we were like, oh, awesome. We'll host Amber, and then we will, maybe she'll be here for 3 years, and then we'll, look back into it. Well, I think that, God knows our hearts, and he knows, like, he's going to work things out. And if we have a call in our lives, he's going to make sure that we know that. And so Amber is switching schools, and she's not going to be back with us in January. And what do you know? In January, we will have been here a year.
Da, 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 da.
And so we are getting ready to, Aaron, I just totally talked about you.
I gave you a shout out.
But we are going to get ready to start and do the foster care classes again. And I know that we're going to have some pushback. I know that we're going to have some, well, isn't your family complete? Like, it's not about completing our family. It's about obeying God, the call on our lives. And so I have cried and cried and cried about going through the classes again. I don't want to. But it's not about what I want and what I don't want. It's about what I'm called to do. And so what we are called to do. And so we've talked to the kids about it. And, if any of you guys have any questions about specifically you want to ask our kids, please type those in, and we will talk to the kids and get back to you with their responses, because we totally would get that you would, if you already have kids of your own and you want to know, like, well, how has it really affected you? And when you do a home study, they do interview everyone in the family. They interview every single kid, they make sure that you're prepared to do it. And so as much as you can be prepared. But we want you guys to feel free to ask us any questions. And we're sharing our story because we know that so many people are called to do it and want to do it, and they're scared. And we just want to let you know that we're scared too.
Word.
We are terrified, and but we do it anyway. And it's just one of those things that you think that you're giving up your life, and in a way you are, but what you get back is immeasurable. Like, you just can't. You're
giving up things that
don't
focus on you, right? Like,
yeah, you're giving up things that don't matter.
Right. It's and that's the challenge. And I think if there's anything that I would encourage anyone to do, like, if you are thinking about foster care, if you're thinking about adoption, or you just are ignoring that, please just be honest with yourself and really be honest with the people who are doing it, because it can be disheartening when someone is like, oh man, I thought about it, but this thing happened. I thought about it, but this thing happened. And I got it. Life happens. But I also get it that if we want to do something, we have the ability, especially in this country, to do it. Mm-hmm. We can make that happen. And so I guess really just own your decision.
Yeah, and the family I was just telling you about that has the 13 kids. She is on Instagram, and she just gave amazing tips on how to afford adoption. And the way she put it was, all of her kids, each one, whether they brought them home from a hospital or on an airplane, cost about $30,000. Health insurance helps offset your biologically born children, and there are ways to offset the cost of paying the professionals who help you bring home your adopted children. And once they're adopted, it doesn't matter how they got to your home. Like, that's just how they got there. That's not who they are, and that's not their story. But I've learned a lot from her. And so if any of you want to follow her, let me know, and I'll give you her tag. But anyway, if if affording it is a problem, there's ways you can ask for help. We'll get you in touch with the right people. If foster care is what you're called to do, then we're here as a resource for you too.
Oh, real quick, respite care.
Oh, yes.
Respite care. So you may not be able to do or willing to do, or maybe you just want to get like a test run of foster care. Foster families need breaks too. And respite care is what happens. You go through the background stuff and it allows you to babysit, right? Like if we have a trip, you're going to another state, something where the children that are with you can't come, or you have something, whatever the situation may be, or you just need a break. You know, maybe you don't have children of your own, and you just need some time away, or your children out of the house, whatever it is. Being a respite care person, I'll let Kathy talk about what it takes, but it allows you to be a blessing to foster families.
Yeah, without having to do court dates and without having to do all that. Like, respite care is a lot less of a rigorous process. It's not a huge background check. They basically come to your house and make sure it's clean and safe. You have a place for the kids to sleep. And then they do a background check, of course. But then you are someone that foster families can leave their foster kids with. That's a safe place. And sometimes it's just for a few days. We left Aiden and Lily in a home for a week because we had gotten them shortly after Earl got home from deployment, or right before. Yeah. He left when Marika and Jaquan were there, and when he got back, Aiden and Lilia were there.
Welcome home.
So the respite care worker, we had a trip planned, and they were just too little to go to the Great Wolf Lodge and for us to all have a good time, so they stayed with them. One other thing I want to say is you can say no to a placement. They interview you and like what can your family handle. Like if you have a lot of little ones and they called us one time, even though we had said we wouldn't take this type of placement, a 15-year-old who had been sexually trafficked by her parents. No, we can't handle that. We're not prepared, and that wouldn't be fair. We also got 2 children who were, for lack of a better term, they were almost feral. They had been so neglected. And so we had them for 2 days, and we quickly realized we weren't equipped to handle them. And so I had to call and make that tough call back, like, I'm sorry, you're going to have to find another home for them. And so you quickly learn that what you can and can't handle, and they'll always ask you to take everybody because they just want to get that child a placement. But you are always free to say no. Okay, a couple more questions. When making travel plans for family vacations, are you able to take the foster child out of the state you're living in? Yes and no. There's one set of 3 that we had gotten, and 2 days later we were leaving to go for Christmas to New York to see my parents. And they were a brand new placement, and the mom was breastfeeding the newborn baby girl. And so that was a no, you can't take them. And so they ended up finding another family for them because we were going to be gone for a week or 2, a while. So it just made more sense to get them another home, and that was hard and sad. But we also knew that we were in the place where our kids, we all needed a vacation, and so you have this freedom to make choices for your family. But Zayden traveled the country with us, and so did Josh and JJ.
Coast to coast.
Yeah, Zayden went to North Carolina with us from Tennessee.
Josh and JJ
went down to Florida, went out to California. Like, as long as you let them know and get permission, you give them advance, they get permission, and then they give you a letter to take with you so that you could show it to anybody that, like, let's say you needed to get them medical care. You could show them this letter that this isn't just some child I abducted. Like, I have permission to have
for
them.
health care.
Yeah. So you absolutely can travel with them. You just have to make arrangements.
Did you ever run into the issue of being vegan and foster care?
Oh, we actually haven't done foster care since we've been vegans. We already had Josh and JJ. And I actually wondered about this, and I thought, there's a family that I follow on Instagram, and they are vegan, but they buy their foster kiddos like cheese sticks and things that make them, that they're used to and comfortable with. And it's kind of the same with having our international student. Like, we are vegan, but she's not. And so,
Definitely feel like the Lord would, I don't know, the expectation of taking care of the orphan and the widow in that situation, in this situation that we're in right now, outweighs our, like, we're not eating it, but
yeah. And I think if you're the one preparing, like they're not going to make us buy meat and prepare it or anything. But when we go out to eat, I'm sure that, we would buy them what they wanted, whether it was chicken or whatever. Like, I don't,
you control where you go though,
yeah,
so
yeah,
it's
like
you just don't go through, like, we don't go to McDonald's or
yeah.
any of those places.
I think there's a definite, like, they want loving families who are going to take safe places.
Yeah.
So how you eat, I do not see that becoming an issue. And then, of course, once they're yours, then they'll just eat how your family eats.
There'll be balls of energy, never stopping.
Yeah, wait till they're potty trained. Oh, boy.
All right.
Okay, so I feel like I keep thinking of things.
Well, this is a lot.
It is a lot. It is so much information.
And we'll never get it all
yeah, that's true.
out here.
Yeah.
But I encourage you all to reach out to Kathy if you have specific questions or just want to talk. She is a wealth of knowledge, and if any of your husbands have questions, they want to know, like what this looks like, what are the things you need to be concerned about, or I don't know, just like what is the impact on the family. I'm more than willing to have that conversation.
Yeah, because that's another big comment I get, probably the second most common I get after the whole I wanted to, but I couldn't say goodbye, is my husband says no, or I don't think my husband would be on board.
Yeah.
So I think that is a real issue.
Yeah.
A real concern for a lot of people. But God will make it clear.
Yeah.
And like the pastor said this last Sunday, it was Mission Sunday, and he said, if you think that maybe you're called overseas, or you think maybe you're called to go tell your neighbor about Christ, or you think you're called to foster care, you probably are. Yeah. Like, God is, and it's just your own fear or selfishness that's holding you back, because that's how we work as people.
That's how we were.
That's how we still are.
Right.
But we just, one foot in front of the other.
Stuff like this keeps us accountable, right?
It does, yeah. Like, sometimes don't think that when we share, we're bragging. We share because we know that so many of you guys are called in some capacity.
You got big hearts out there.
Big hearts.
I see the names. I know
big
you
homes.
People. Lots of love to give.
And yeah, you guys love Jesus. And just think of how much love you have to give to these kids who need it. So we don't say things because we want you to feel bad. We want you to feel
supported,
encouraged,
loved,
and maybe a little convicted.
But
that's not our job. That's the Holy Spirit. That's the Holy Spirit. All right, we better go. We've been on here about an hour, but we love you guys.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for being here and participating. And if any questions, it doesn't have to stop now. Like, keep them coming.
Love y'all.
All right.
Peace.